Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the second of my end of season waffle videos. Now, before we get started, just the usual reminder, these are not reviews. They are just videos with a few of my thoughts on how I think each team and driver got on in 2023 and a look at some stats as well. You know how I love my stats. I'll carry on making my way up the Constructors' Championship table today with a word on Alpine's season shortly, but first, let's kick things off with Williams and what was a stronger year than I expected at the start of the season. Look, I didn't think they would be cut well adrift at the back of the grid or anything quite as dramatic as that, but I did expect them to be in and around that fight for P9-10, honestly. Perhaps not a great surprise given what my predictions are usually like, but how wrong was I on that one? They are definitely a team on the up, and one thing that was great to see in 2023 was that although they were still strong on tracks that benefit slippery cars in a straight line, like Monza as one example, they also demonstrated good competitive pace at a variety of other circuits. That feels like a really solid step forward. And what a job James Vowles is doing as well, by the way. I know I've said this a lot this season, but he really has been a big influence at the team, and it seems as though he's a safe pair of hands steering the team in the right direction. I really do think the future is bright, and Williams picked up 8 points finishes in 2023 and scored 28 points and finished P7 in the standings. That's 3 places better than in 2022, and they were 20 points better off as well. Really good year. What's even more impressive about that in some ways, I suppose, is they managed to achieve that with largely one driver, as Alex Albon scored all but one of the team's points. And on Albon, I think he has been absolutely fantastic this season. Sure, yeah, the car has taken a step forward and his teammate has hardly been sensational, but Albon has grown even more this year following a really good return to F1 last season. I was sceptical, as I've said before, about his return to F1, but he proved me wrong in 2022 and really doubled down on that in 2023. He's led the team really well too, and I kind of hope he sticks around with them well into the future, because with James Vowles at the helm and Albon as the lead driver, Williams could well be in very good shape for the coming years. Specifically on Albon though, he's demonstrated good speed all year, but he's once again showed how good he is in defence, and that proved vital at times when he didn't perhaps have the pace at some races on a Sunday. Thinking as just one example about his battle with Ocon at Canada. Keeping the Alpine behind resulted in a 7th place finish and some solid points, something of course helped by the straight line speed of the car. Just overall, as I've already said, really impressed by Albon this year, and surely there have got to be some teams further up the grid keeping a close eye on him for the future. Let's have a look at his stats then, and his average qualifying position comes in at a fairly solid 12.4 with an average race position of 11.11 or 11.11 if you like, which, despite being impressed with this season, was a bit of a surprise when I read that. A pleasant surprise, I should say. Then again, he has had some super results and has shown some good consistency, so perhaps I shouldn't be surprised. His best finish of the season came in Canada and Italy with a couple of P7s, and he managed to score points at 7 races for a total of 27 points, a lot of 7s there, and ended up finishing P13 in the standings. As for Logan Sargeant though, not great, but I will say that with the usual it was his rookie season caveat, so maybe some slack there. However, rookie season or not, he was destroyed by Albon in every stat and struggled at times with some pretty hefty mistakes and some very expensive crashes. And actually, according to Sports Illustrated and a number of other outlets, Sargeant topped the crash damage cost table for 2023 with more than $4.3 million worth of damage, not the table any driver wants to be on top of. On the positive side of things though, Sargeant has shown some improvement, especially in the final few races with a point at Austin and P7 in qualifying in Vegas, which, after penalties for sight, saw him start P6. He also finished 11th in Brazil, so not a sensational turnaround by any stretch of the imagination, but better than much of his season had gone to that point. His average position in qualifying is 17.22 and 14.86 for his average race finish. He also got knocked out in Q1 17 times compared to his teammates' 5. He did though pick up a couple of Q3 appearances but finished bottom of the full-time drivers in these standings with just 1 point. Maybe this next bit is going to be a little bit unsurprising, but Albon wiped the floor with him, winning 22-0 in the teammate qualifying head-to-head, and Sargeant was outraced 18-2 overall and 13-0 in races both drivers finished. It wasn't even remotely close. Now, I should say at this stage that this video has been recorded a few days after the season finale, and so as of right now, Williams have not yet announced whether he has kept his seat or not. The big question will obviously be whether his improvement towards the end of the season was enough for the team to give him another year. My feeling lately has been that he will be in the car for 2024. We shall see, of course, but if anything has been announced between me saying this and editing the video, I'll pop something on screen letting you know, but just be aware no call has been made at time of recording. Moving on to Alpine then, and honestly I'm struggling a little bit. I suppose the best way to sum up their year is by saying it was really all about that inter-team battle, because they were comfortably clear of Williams in the standings and a long way off Aston Martin in P5. 120 points for the Enstone team versus 28 for Williams and 280 for Aston. That's quite a gap. Essentially no real battle with any other team when it came to championship positions. It felt as well like a bit of an up and down season at times, didn't it? I hope you know what I mean. One weekend they were top of the midfield, or at least in some solid point scoring positions, and another week they were kind of nowhere. However, when you go through the results from this year, they actually only failed to score at 6 races, managed to get double points finishes at 7, and even picked up 2 podiums. It was, on paper, a much better season than it felt at times. We know one of their big issues for this year was a lack of power, which is something they're going to have to learn to live with now until 2026, after their push for engine equalisation failed to gain support from rival teams, according to motorsport.com, with the focus now on the new engine regulations. Without going too technical, because you know I'm rubbish at that kind of thing, essentially, with them being down on power, they're going to have to maximise their aero package and efficiency as best they can. Could be a tough or frustrating few years for them, or they could just keep having seasons like 2023, which if the Ocon-Gasly fight continues is kind of fine by me. On that subject, there was a lot of talk coming into 2023 about the possibility of Ocon and Gasly coming together on track, and whilst there have been some close battles and perhaps some close calls, it never really happened. Yeah, they had race-ending contact in Hungary, but that was because they were caught in a chain reaction following contact between Zhou and Ricciardo. That was not either of their fault. On the drivers, and as already touched on, the fight between the two of them was a lot of fun to keep an eye on this season, with Pierre Gasly just coming out on top, 4 points clear of his teammate. And I think he had a really good year. It's never easy to walk into a new team and go head-to-head with an established teammate. So to get in there and get up to speed pretty quickly, it's got to be said, and beat them over the course of your first season with the team is a very strong showing indeed. And the battle was just about as close as I expected coming into 2023, although I will admit that I thought Ocon's experience with the team would be just enough to edge it. Looking at the season, surely the highlight of Gasly's year, apart from beating Ocon, was that podium finish in Zandvoort. He kept it on track during tricky, changeable conditions, safety cars, and a red flag to come through from P12 on the grid to P3 in the race. A really impressive drive in a race I'm sure many people wouldn't mind watching again over the winter. His stats are decent as well, and it really was, as already mentioned, very close between the two drivers. Gasly's average position in qualifying was 11.04 with an average race finish of 9.68. He also averaged 2.45 points per race for a total of 62 and a final championship position of P11. Of course, Esteban Ocon also found himself on the podium in 2023 with 3rd place in Monaco, having qualified 4th before being promoted to P3 on the grid following Charles Leclerc's penalty. And it was a race where, once again, as we've seen before, he had to do some heavy defending to hang on to that podium position, and I think he did a cracking job to do so. When it comes to his season as a whole, though, I think there will be a lot of disappointment there that he lost out to Gasly, but frankly, whilst it's never nice to lose to your teammate, it's not like he was absolutely battered by him. So it wasn't as humiliating as some teammate battles we've seen in the past. It must be said, though, that of the two drivers, Ocon certainly had the brunt of the bad luck with 4 mechanical retirements over the course of the season, including from the race in Singapore, where he had driven extremely well and looked on for some very good points, which could have easily tipped the balance the other way in his championship position fight with Gasly. I mean, I say all of that, but he was beaten 14-8 in the qualifying head-to-head by Gasly. Then again, when it mattered on a Sunday, where the points are actually scored, he won 10-9 overall and 10-5 in the races they both managed to finish. Still, though, finishing ahead of your teammate in the standings is always the first goal, especially in a season like Alpine had. But my overall point is I don't think he had a bad year in terms of his speed and performances. I will add this before I run through his stats. Things aren't all sunshine and rainbows at Alpine, and we've heard this year more than a couple of times some friction on the radio between the drivers and the team, including at the season finale in Abu Dhabi, where Gasly questioned why the team had undercut him with Ocon on Sunday, and questions have also been asked about strategy elsewhere in 2023. Let me know down in the comments what you think, but perhaps that friction comes from the tight battle they were both in. It's just a thought. But those concerns need to be addressed by Alpine over the winter, because although it's not either driver at fault in those calls, those are the sorts of things that can quickly boil over, especially if one driver thinks the other is getting preferential treatment. If Alpine are going to keep having seasons like they had this year, they need their drivers to be as happy as drivers are ever going to be, and they need to be getting both cars to the end of races to maximise the opportunity for points. They don't need to be causing that friction themselves and potentially seeing that, as I say, boil over and causing them problems on Grand Prix day. But anyway, let's finish this video by having a look at Ocon's stats for 2023, and as already touched on several times, they're largely not that different to Gasly's. In fact, Ocon's average position in qualifying was 11.18, and he had an average finish on a Sunday of 9.0. He also scored 58 points, averaging 2.54 points per race, and finished in P12 come the end of the season. Again, and for what feels like the 100th time in this part, not much between the two Alpine drivers at all in terms of the averages and points, and I am really looking forward to their battle again in 2024. That is it then for the second part of my end of season waffle series that still doesn't have a name, so maybe waffle series will have to do, but let me know down in the comment section how you think Williams and Alpine got on in 2023. Now, I will be back next Thursday at 4 PM GMT with waffle number 3, which will of course be all about Aston Martin and McLaren. Really looking forward to that one. Not that I haven't looked forward to the other ones, but both of those teams have had mixed and fascinating seasons. More on that next Thursday. In the meantime though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like, as it really does help to give the channel a little bit of a boost, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.